Welcome to Terrorific, the place where it's perpetually spooky season. I am your host, Brandon O, and we are back to continue our exploration of the Saw franchise to determine which trap across all 10 films is the most diabolical of them all. To recap, the winner from the first film was the barbed wire jungle, where we had a man who had previously attempted suicide fall victim to Jigsaw's wrath and downright disgust at the fact that someone would attempt to take their own life while Jigsaw himself suffered and slowly died from an inoperable, incurable brain tumor. After shedding blood, tears, and literal stomach acid, it became apparent that Jigsaw had no intention of letting this man have a chance at surviving, and that, in my opinion, is the essence of true diabolicality. But how does that barbed wire jungle compare to our current crop of contenders? I am, of course, referring to the traps found in Saw 2, which will be the focus of this episode. However, the fun of the horror film genre lies in more than just its gore. So, I will also be analyzing other elements and plot devices found in Saw 2 and how they expand upon or contradict the canon established in the first Saw film. But before we get into that, I have a couple of housekeeping items to quickly address. Number 1, thank you for pressing play. And number 2, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your platform of choice to help it continue to grow. Okay, that's that. So let's get into it. After the success of the first Saw film, with its 10,000% ROI, a sequel was given the green light basically immediately. But James Wan and Lee Whannell at the time were working on the script for their next project, Dead Silence, so they were unavailable to write or direct the Saw sequel. So that's when a man by the name of Darren Lynn Bousman came into play. Up until that point, he had only been known for directing music videos, heavy metal music videos, but he had been working on his own script and shopping it around to producers in Hollywood. The title of this script was The Desperate, and Bousman was having difficulty finding anyone to produce it and turn it into a feature film because the feedback given was that it was too similar to Saw. Maybe the title wasn't the only thing that was desperate. With James Wan and Lee Whannell having their attention elsewhere, the production team behind Saw, Twisted Pictures, were able to get their hands on a copy of Bousman's script and determine that with a few tweaks here and there, it could be repurposed to meet their needs. And with that, the script for Saw 2 was born. James Wan and Lee Whannell attached themselves to the project as executive producers, but the characters, traps, and deaths remained unchanged from the original script that Bousman wrote. However, Whannell did lend his pen to help with the rewrites to make things make sense within the Saw universe. Financially, Saw 2 was given a budget 4 times that of the first film. So, on a budget of $4 million, it went on to gross approximately $148 million worldwide. That was a decrease in ROI. I mean, it's hard to match a 10,000% return, but a 3,700% return isn't bad either. Saw 2 also had a dip in the reception from viewers as well. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film currently has a score of 38% from critics and 59% from audiences. The critics' consensus reads, quote, Saw 2 is likely to please the gore-happy fans of the original, though it may be too gruesome for those not familiar with the first film's premise. Okay, I have to interject there. To emphasize again, this is not a film review podcast. I'm not here to argue for nor against the merits of the film, but that critics' consensus, in my opinion, is highly misleading. Even if you're familiar with the premise of the first Saw film, the difference in gore between the first one and the second one is like night and day. The premise of a film does not necessarily equate to what the viewer is actually going to see on screen. In the first Saw, most of the violence and the gore happens off screen. We see the aftermath through police investigations, or we see quick flashbacks, but there's very few instances of actual violence happening in view of the audience. And that's a stylistic choice. That's an artistic choice. Or in this case, that's a budgetary decision. If you have a budget of $1 million and only 18 days to shoot the film, you can't afford to have every single scene showcase someone getting their head blown up or their foot chopped off. You have to pick and choose your spots. But with a budget that's scaled up and a filming schedule that's months long instead of weeks, guess what? Now you can afford to have these special effects where you're showing someone's brains on the floor. Now you can afford to shoot these extra scenes and hire these extra actors and have them go through the traps in real time and show that to the audience. And that's not indicative of the premise of the film. That's indicative of how much money the production company now is willing to invest into the film. But I digress. That's the end of my TED Talk. Let's get to trapping. If for some reason you have not seen Saw 2, this is your spoiler alert. Now, the structure of the traps in the second film was a little bit more complicated than the first one. The first one, everything was delineated nicely, neatly, clear, very distinct trap setup. This one, we have traps within traps within traps. So by my count, we have 9 traps. So kicking us off at number 9 as the least diabolical trap in Saw 2 is the peephole pistol, because it was completely avoidable. Now, the overall premise of Saw 2 is that 8 strangers have been trapped in this house that's been rigged with all kinds of deadly things. And so when they first awaken, one of them finds a key on the ground, and the key has a note attached to it that says, literally, do not attempt to use this key in the door in front of you. Well, the guy attempts to use the key in the door in front of him, and surprise, surprise, there's a pistol on the other side of the door. So when another guy looks through the peephole, as the first guy turns the key in the lock, well, he gets a bullet to the face. Completely avoidable. All we have to do is read and comprehend what the note says, but Mans just could not manage to do that. And this would not be his last instance of being the least valuable player in this game. So Xavier, you fucking suck, buddy. Coming in at number 8, we have Eric's test of patience. Now, the 8 people who are trapped in the escape room, they have 2 hours to escape before this deadly nerve gas that's been pumping throughout the entire place kills them. Well, one of the people that's trapped in there is the son of our protagonist, Detective Eric Matthews. And so while Matthews is at Jigsaw's hideout trying to figure out where these people are so he can rescue them, and most notably his son, Jigsaw says, hey, just sit down and talk to me until the time expires, and I promise you your son will be returned to you unharmed. But Matthews has a reputation of being a corrupt and hot-headed cop, so he's unable to sit there, and hijinks ensue. But this comes in at number 8 because there's no risk of harm to Matthews himself. There is the chance that Jigsaw is lying about the safety of his son, so it's not completely avoidable like the peephole pistol was. So that gives it the slight edge. At number 7, we have the sharp handcuffs. Now, the people trapped in the escape room, they have been searching for syringes hidden throughout the house that has the antidote to the nerve gas that's been poisoning them. Now, one of the women, she finds a room that has a suspended glass box in it, and within that box is one of the syringes. Now, when she goes to reach her hand up through the bottom, she discovers that it's a one-way entry point, and if she tries to remove her hands, these blades of metal slice her wrist open and she's unable to escape. But the key aspect there is that she's unable to escape on her own. Theoretically, someone else in the house could come along and help her out. In worst case scenario, if she panics and slices too deeply, then she would probably pass out pretty quickly from blood loss, and it'd be a relatively merciful ending by Jigsaw standards, I suppose. And speaking of Jigsaw standards, at number 6, we have the bathroom prison part 2. So everything that transpires in Saw 2 turns out to be this elaborate scheme perpetrated by Amanda, our reverse bear trap survivor from the first Saw film. The 8 people trapped in the house are all related to Detective Matthews in some way. His son, obviously, is his son. And then the other 7 people, Matthews was their arresting officer. And in most of those cases, he falsified the evidence against them in order to get his convictions. So in Amanda's case, Matthews planted drugs on her. That sent her to prison, where she then became a junkie. And because of that, she blames him, holds a grudge against him, and wants revenge against him. After all the hijinks and the big twist reveal, Matthews finds himself chained by the ankle in the bathroom prison, and admittedly, his chances of survival and or escape do seem to be much lower than Gordon and Adam. I don't think Amanda has any intention of ever letting him out, but technically, theoretically, there is still a chance because he has until he starves or dehydrates to death in order to figure out some way to escape or have someone find him and come bail him out. So not great odds, but you never know. But I do feel the need to deduct some points for the lack of originality here on Amanda's part, reusing Jigsaw's trademark trap, if you will. All right, now to the top 5. At number 5, we have Jigsaw's hideout. So when the police first storm his hideout in the beginning of the film, they discover pretty quickly that it's booby-trapped. I guess you got to know your target here, guys. And so there's a certain point where they're going up some stairs, which are inside of this metal cage, which should have been kind of the first indicator that something may be awry here. Anyway, one unlucky officer steps on a stair that is rigged with a pressure sensor. And once his feet hit there, a block shoots out and completely demolishes his ankles. And he tumbles down the steps, knocks everyone down behind him as they fall against this metal cage, this chain link fence. An electrical current surges through it and folks get barbecued. But wait, there's more. As they ascend the stairs, they find Jigsaw sitting there. He explains his whole escape room, blah, blah, blah. There are some monitors that have cameras showing what's going on in the escape room. Everyone assumes the feeds are live, but plot twist, they are not. They are a recorded playback. And so that aspect there, subverting expectations, quite diabolical. In the number 4 spot, we have the escape room itself. When the 8 strangers first awaken, Amanda somehow, hint, hint, wink, wink, finds a tape recorder hidden behind some bricks or some shit. And a guy even asks, "Oh, hey, how'd you know that was there?" And she just looks at him and looks away and plays the tape. But okay, whatever. Anyway, the tape explains the whole setup of the game. 2 hours, nerve gas, find the syringes, escape. In the room with him, there's a safe, and the combination to the safe is apparently known by all of them according to this tape player. And they just have to figure out what that combination is and how to work together and reason through it. Okay, if you're gonna poison me, just poison me, bro. Don't also give me some fucking thought exercises to reason through as well. I mean, that's just rude. But then you also have the aspect of having all these random people thrown together in this life or death scenario, and they have no way of trusting one another. And of course, they're going to turn on each other. But first, they make their way down to the basement where they discover our number 3 trap, the basement oven. So in this oven, there are syringes in the back that can be retrieved and, administer the antidote. Well, one unlucky individual must crawl into this oven to get them. And unfortunately, he makes the mistake of not confirming his exit points, not assessing the situation properly. He trips some kind of switch that causes the oven door to close and ignite, and he gets cooked. And honestly, I think fire for me is just like, it automatically has to go into at least the top 3. Like burning to death, I have trouble imagining a more painful way to go out. Just big yikes all around. At number 2, and this was a tough one for me to call, but at number 2, we have one of the more infamous traps in the Saw series, the syringe pit. So our escape room players, as they continue to make their way through the house, they find a door that is really difficult to open. It seems to be attached to some kind of wire that's making it unable to open. And while most people would walk away in this instance, our LVP, good old Xavier, comes and forces his way through the door, which then kickstarts a 3-minute timer. And they find a tape that says, once this time expires, the door in front of you will lock forever. You can't escape through this way. All you have to do to escape is to dive into this literal pit of thousands of seemingly used dirty needles, find the key in there, and use it to unlock the door to get out. Now, this game was designed for Xavier being the drug dealer of the group, but because he is what 21 Savage would describe as pussy, he decided to throw Amanda into the pit instead to retrieve the key to escape. And despite it being a needle in a 1,000 syringe haystack, she somehow manages to find this key. Wink, wink, hint, hint, and toss it out to Xavier just seconds after the time expired, causing the door to remain locked. From a physical pain perspective, this is probably one of the more milder traps, relatively speaking. But from a hygiene perspective, it is absolutely disgusting, vile, and fucked up that anyone could even conceive of such a notion. To have all these syringes, each with the possibility of harboring HIV or any other kind of disease that can be spread through this blood vector, is ugh. Last but not least, our number 1 most diabolical trap in Saw 2. And I admit this is probably rooted in my own personal bias, because I do not like any object, sharp or otherwise, anywhere near or around my eyes. That just really, really bothers me. And so, our number 1 most diabolical trap in Saw 2 is the death mask. The death mask is featured in the opening scene of the film, and it really sets the tone for what the audience can expect from a blood and gore perspective moving forward. As I mentioned earlier, Saw 1 showed most of its violence off screen, while Saw 2 makes it a point right out of the gate to let you know that you're going to be seeing some shit this time around. So we have the character Michael, who is Detective Matthews' number 1 informant, his rat, his snitch. TV cuts on, we see Billy the puppet and Jigsaw explaining through the puppet that Michael has this contraption around his neck. Within this contraption on either side, there are like spikes, and it's rigged to a timer similar to the reverse bear trap was. Once he gets up from his chair, the spring timer will activate, and he has 1 minute to use the key to unlock the device to take it off before it closes shut. As the video continues, Michael sees footage of himself laying unconscious on an operating table, and the camera shows his face as his eye is bloodied, and it's implied, hinted at, and eventually shown via x-ray that the key to unlock this contraption is hidden in his eye socket, and all he has to do is cut into it, retrieve it, and he can get out. So, a few questions. 1, what the fuck? 2, what the actual fuck? And 3, are you fucking kidding me? I'm not even going to pretend that there'd be any chance I'd be able to even attempt such a thing. Whatever the stakes are, like, I'm done. Like, it's a wrap for me. Zero chance to cut out or cut open my own eyelid into my own eye socket, whatever it is. There's just no way. I'm done. I'm going to have to sit down and just reflect on my life choices for a minute. And then I'd also have the knowledge that once that time expired, there's going to be a spike coming from my other eye on top of that. Like, what the fuck? With all due respect to the barbed wire jungle, you had a good run, but it's not even close. You're getting washed here. I am taking the death mask over the barbed wire jungle as the most diabolical trap in the first 2 Saw films. It will advance to take on our next contender. And my final comments to wrap all this up as it relates to Jigsaw's character. If my buzzword for the first film was narcissism, I think my buzzword for Saw 2 would be hypocrisy. In Amanda's reverse bear trap scene from the first Saw, there was that paraphrased Bible quote that went roughly, if you live your life for yourself, you will lose it. If you give your life to me, you will find true life. Well, Amanda clearly took those words to heart. At this point, she's Jigsaw's successor. She's his accomplice, his right-hand person. She essentially worships him and views him as her savior, feeding into this messiah complex. However, during his conversation in the film with Detective Matthews, Jigsaw tells a story about when he was first diagnosed. He attempted to commit suicide by driving his car off of a cliff. Somehow he miraculously survived. He took like some shrapnel to the gut, but still was able to walk away. And that's what gave him this new purpose of spreading the gospel of appreciating life and whatnot. If that's the case, then why was the barbed wire jungle victim a person who had tried to commit suicide previously? Why was his game constructed in such a way that he had no chance of winning? This man was condemned to death because a random guy deemed that he did not appreciate his life enough. Yet that same random guy also did not appreciate his own life enough. So it's just another example of Jigsaw's delusional judgment, but maybe that's indicative of his brain tumor impacting and warping his mental faculties. But we'll continue to unpack that as we progress through the series. Next episode, we'll be tackling Saw 3. Head on over to IG at Terrorific Podcast to check out some movie recommendations for the weekend. And remember to always keep it spooky.